Hello and welcome to the NESN.com football update. I'm Ashley Allen. The 2015-2016 NFL season is proving to be, surprise, surprise, unpredictable, full of upsets, blowouts, and teams escaping with the win by the skin of their teeth. Week 3 concluded on Monday, leaving 4 teams without a W and 6 undefeated. Now we have a ton to talk about today, including our Week 4 picks, NFL power rankings, and fantasy football analysis. But first, let's dive into the New England Patriots. The defending Super Bowl champs improved to 3-0 Sunday with their dominating 51-17 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Michaela Vernava is with NESN.com Patriots beat writer Doug Kyed at Gillette Stadium to break down the win.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. It's just 1 week after the next. Tom Brady is looking more and more reminiscent of the 07 Tom Brady. I mean, this guy's just on a vengeance rampage.
Yeah, if anything, he almost looks better than the 2007 version right now. I've been watching Tom Brady for quite a few years now, and I'm not sure if I've ever seen him quite as precise, quite as accurate as he played in these last few games, especially on Sunday against the Jaguars. No, Brady's really on fire right now, and it looks like he really is putting together possibly his best season of his NFL career.
And now, Jags Week is one that most Patriots fans and a lot of people think is one that's just definitely in the bag, but not Bill Belichick. He said that he had been preparing for this matchup since April. And how does that preparation show on the field? Well,
the Jaguars are a team that the Patriots don't play very often, obviously, so they don't really know the team very well. They didn't know the system very well. But, I mean, we saw it on Sunday, 51-17. The Patriots really did just kind of obliterate the Jaguars. I'm not sure how much of that is preparation and how much of it is the Patriots just being that much better of a team than the Jaguars are. Obviously, Blake Bortles, second-year quarterback. When Bill Belichick, who's obviously a defensive genius, is preparing for a guy like Bortles, Patriots definitely have the advantage there, but no, they came right out of the gate, swinging. The offense was great, the defense was great. I think a lot of that does have to do, obviously, with the Patriots' preparation and the fact that they had been planning for this game for so long.
And Doug, we talked after Week 1 about how Rob Gronkowski is just pretty much virtually unable to be defended. How have Week 2 and then again in Week 3, how has that solidified your feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean, on Sunday against the Jaguars, he was held to 4 catches, but he had over 100 yards. So it really is pretty much impossible to stop this guy. You can double team him, you can put a linebacker on him, you can put a safety on him, but there's no great matchup there for him. He's just the complete package there at tight end, and once again, it seems like he's having probably the best season of his career. So this Patriots offense really is just really clicking right now.
And then on defense, Jamie Collins against the Jaguars brought his season sack total to 3.5, puts him on pace for 18 on the season. What do you think about his development?
Yeah, he's really coming on strong this season. Weeks 1 and 2, I didn't think he was that great against the run, but he was actually very good against the Jaguars against the run. He's very aggressive out there, chasing running backs down from behind, and that pass rush skill right now is just really on full display.
All right, thanks, Doug. Well, earlier in the week, I took your fantasy football questions and ran them by our fantasy expert, and here are your answers. After Week 3, some of you may be falling behind in your fantasy football leagues, but luckily, it's not too late to salvage the season. We dug through our fantasy football mailbag and picked out some of your burning questions. First up, Chad says he has running back Jonathan Stewart, who has thus far been a disappointment. So Nick, should he hold on to hope or hit the waiver wire for a new running back?
I would give it one more week. Stewart has received the bulk of the carries in the Carolina backfield. It doesn't help that Cam Newton also is a pretty good rusher in the red zone and has a few rushing touchdowns near the goal line as well. Stewart does have a favorable matchup this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. Is giving up the 3rd most rush yards.
All right, well, next up, Brian wants to know Carlos Hyde or Giovanni Bernard?
This is a tough one, but I'd give a slight edge to Carlos Hyde. He's a tremendous running back, tons of talent, and he doesn't have anybody battling him for the #1 job in the 49ers backfield, whereas Gio Bernard has to share carries with Jeremy Hill, who's a pretty good back in his own right. Bernard has averaged only 13.6 carries per game this season, and I don't think that's enough to make him fantasy relevant on a consistent basis.
All right, well, next up, Steven wants to know, will CJ Anderson ever regain his mojo?
If he's wondering if CJ Anderson is going to be as productive for the rest of this season as he was toward the end of last season when he was probably the best running back for fantasy football owners, I would say no. The bread and butter for the Broncos this season, at least offensively, has been passing the ball with Peyton Manning, targeting Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. Even though Gary Kubiak is a run-first coach, I think he'll probably go to the pass more.
All right, thanks, Nick. If you have some answers that you need or want to be featured next week, make sure to send in your questions to our Facebook page or on Twitter @NESN.
Ashley Allen here in studio with NESN.com's Ricky Doyle. Now, Ricky, Week 3 had its fair share of blowouts. The Chicago Bears were shut out for the first time since 2002, losing to the Seahawks 26-0. And the Arizona Cardinals absolutely stomped the 49ers, losing 47-7 after Colin Kaepernick threw 2 pick sixes and 4 interceptions. So looking ahead to Week 4, what teams do you see winning big?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears are shut out again this season because they look like a train wreck right now. But for one of my locks of the week, I will go with the Carolina Panthers over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Carolina enters this game favored by 3 points. The defense has been good, very stout against the run. They're going to force Jameis Winston to make plays, which it's early in his career, so he's going to make some mistakes. And also, conversely, the Buccaneers have been terrible against the run so far this season. That's not going to bode well against a team with the quarterback in Cam Newton, who has totaled more rush yards than Eddie Lacy, Marshawn Lynch, and Jeremy Hill, among others. So I really like the Panthers going on the road to Tampa Bay and winning this game. And what about upsets, Ricky? As far as upsets go, I kind of like Cleveland Browns over the San Diego Chargers. And I know that's kind of a dicey pick because of how bad the Browns have played at times. Head coach Mike Pettin said after last week's game against Oakland that they look like a scout team at times, which obviously you never want to hear that from your head coach. But San Diego, they got some serious offensive line issues, and until that gets rectified, I don't really like their playoff chances. I also worry a little bit about Phillip Rivers staying healthy.
All right, thanks, Ricky. Later on in the show, Ricky will be back with his Game of the Week predictions. But now let's send it back to Gillette Stadium to check in with Michaela and Doug as the Patriots head into their bye week.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. For NFL teams heading into the bye week, it's a good chance to rest and reset. But for the Patriots, who have absolutely dominated their past 3 opponents, how can this bye week affect their momentum at all?
It definitely can, but the Patriots are kind of lucky about who they're facing out of the bye week. The Dallas Cowboys obviously don't have Tony Romo right now, so they'll be facing Brandon Whedon. So I think that it'll be a tougher matchup than the Jaguars, but not a whole lot different there. Belichick is 11-4 coming out of bye weeks with the Patriots, which, that's basically his average record anyway with the Patriots, but they have had success obviously coming out of the bye week. And yeah, I think there might be some concern there with momentum, but as the Patriots coaches have said this week, they can't choose when their bye week is, so it'll be nice to get some recovery time, get some rest after training camp and after the start of the season. You kind of forget that the Patriots have been going at this for quite a while now, so that rest is still very important even early in the season.
Honestly, at the rate they're going right now, I don't really think anything can slow their roll, let alone a week off. But as you said, they do have past success coming out of the bye week. Historically, Bill Belichick is 11-4. What do you think he will be doing while the players are off this week?
I'm sure he'll get a little bit of time to himself, but mostly I think he will be just kind of game planning for the Cowboys, and then a lot of the coaching staff will be planning ahead into the Colts game and the Broncos game and some of the more difficult matchups that the Patriots face going forward.
Well, the Patriots do have the earliest possible bye week. Doug, how could this come back to bite them later in the season when maybe they have some injuries to deal with and actually could use the rest?
Yeah, it is the earliest, like you said. Week 4 is very early for the bye week, but the Patriots do typically also get a bye week before the playoffs, so that's another rest and recovery time for them. So yeah, I think the most opportune time is to have a bye week after 8 games, just split the season right in half, but it is pretty early. I think they probably would have preferred to have it later. This team's so good, though, I don't think it'll really affect them too much.
Yeah, not opportune, but certainly not the biggest adversity they'll face down. Doug, thanks a lot. Ashley, back to you.
All right, thanks, Michaela. Now we're here with NESN.com's Mike Cole. And Mike, you've ranked all 32 teams heading into Week 4. What's your number 1 team right now?
For now and for the foreseeable future, it looks like the New England Patriots. They're heading into the bye week, looking as good as they've have in a few years. Obviously, last year, they're coming off the Super Bowl, expectations high this year. They've hit the ground running. I know a lot of people think that this is a team that's playing mad. It's kind of manifested itself that way through 3 games. So a little bit early of a bye week, but I think they're in a really good spot moving forward.
And in your opinion, what is one team you think is on the rise?
I like what the New York Giants have done in the last couple of weeks. I think that this team isn't a great team, but they're going to take advantage of opportunities around them, which is kind of a hallmark of Tom Coughlin teams. The Tony Romo injury in Dallas is huge, as with the Dez Bryant injury. And the Eagles have, underachieved so far this season. They can beat up on those teams. They're going to be in a good spot. So I don't necessarily love them. I just like the situation.
All right, and how about a team that might have started off hot but seems like they're cooling down?
Coming into the season, the Baltimore Ravens had plenty of high hopes. I think last season we saw that game in Foxborough. They had a chance to advance to the AFC Championship, and they blew that. And it looks like they haven't recovered since. They start the season 0-3 for the first time in franchise history. It's a team that's undisciplined, 5th in penalty yardage in the NFL, and defensively their secondary is just an absolute disaster. AJ Green torched them. The bad tackling didn't help either. So that's a team that's got a lot of question marks, and it could get ugly fast.
All right, thanks, Mike. When we come back, some highlights from our weekly football podcast and Ricky Doyle's Game of the Week predictions. But first, let's send it to NESN.com's fantasy football expert, Nick Goss, who has his top waiver wire picks heading into Week 4.
I'm NESN.com's fantasy football expert, Nick Goss, here with your waiver wire advice for Week 4. One player I would add this week is Dallas Cowboys running back Lance Dunbar. He leads all running backs in receptions and receiving yards. He's also playing an awful Saints defense in Week 4, and the Cowboys seem to be more run-focused now without Tony Romo for the next 8 to 10 weeks. Another player I would pick up this week is RISHARD Matthews, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. He has 2 consecutive games of 110 yards or more. He had 2 touchdowns against a good Buffalo Bills defense in Week 3, and he's become the top target for Ryan Tannehill, who's 5th in the NFL in passing yards. One player I would drop this week is Philadelphia Eagles rookie wide receiver Nelson Aguilar. He came into this season as one of the most popular rookies for fantasy drafts, but he's made almost no impact this season. He has 0 targets and 0 catches in Week 3, and he has only 4 receptions on 8 targets through 3 weeks. The best advice I can give you here is drop him for someone more reliable. Another player I would drop this week in just about every league is Minnesota Vikings quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. The second-year pro has averaged only 168 yards passing this season. He has only 1 touchdown with 0 interceptions, and the Vikings are relying more on the run than they were last season now that Adrian Peterson is healthy and leading the league in rushing. Be sure to check NESN.com for all your fantasy football waiver wire advice. I'm Nick Goss.
Ashley Allen back in studio for NESN.com's weekly football update. NESN.com has you covered for all your football podcast needs, covering the New England Patriots, fantasy football, and complete NFL picks every week. Here's a look at some of our highlights from Week 4, and of course, make sure to tune in at NESN.com/podcast or check out our SoundCloud page for the complete listening experience.
The resurgence of blunt force trauma. We saw LeGarrette Blount back in full force against the Jaguars. 3 touchdowns. How do you think we'll be seeing the split of time between him and Dion Lewis going forward?
I think it'll be kind of similar to what we saw from the Jaguars in the Jaguars game. I think that Lewis might kind of be that starter. He'll be that pass-catching back. But then at the end of games, during blowouts or when they have a lead, then they can go to Blount. It's just that thunder and lightning type matchup. But it's just something that's always kind of worked for NFL teams, and there's no one really doing it better right now than Dion Lewis and LeGarrette Blount.
If you're a Roethlisberger owner, what are you doing? Who's a QB you're trying to maybe snag in the waiver wire or make a trade for or something like that? Yep.
Wait it out. You hope that he gets back for the fantasy playoffs and you can use him then. So hold on, don't panic, stash him. If Marcus Mariota is still out there, I would go snag him. TYROD Taylor has been pretty good for Buffalo. You can get rushing stats from both of those guys.
Go to your banks after work today. Withdraw all of your money because this is the best week of football. Do a 7-team Andreezy Parleezy. The Ravens over the Steelers, who have an injured quarterback. Colts versus the Jags, or the Jags. Bills versus the Giants. Bills are at home. They don't lose there. Packers, 49ers. The Broncos versus the Vikings. Broncos are at home. Seahawks over the Lions. And the Cardinals over the Rams. The Cardinals are the best team in the NFL right now. Parleezy that. You will win a lot of money. Take it to the bank.
Buffalo doesn't lose at home, huh?
The hell's the Patriots? They're playing the Giants this week.
A number of big divisional games will take center stage in Week 4 of the NFL season. I'm joined now by NESN.com's Ricky Doyle. And Ricky, in your opinion, which out of these games do you think are absolute must-watches?
I'm going to go overseas for the first one and go with the New York Jets versus the Miami Dolphins in London, neutral site game. So usually these London games kind of stink, but this is actually a pretty good matchup this week. The Finns so far have been frauds. I really thought that coming into the season they were going to be kind of a force in the AFC East. Has not proven to be the case so far. The Jets coming off a loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, so kind of a gut check game for these two teams. Miami is not been playing well against the run, and the Jets are getting Chris Ivory back this week, so there's a potential there to maybe gash them a little bit on the ground. But yeah, really just a game that if these two want to be taken seriously in the AFC East alongside the likes of the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills, they've got to show something.
All right, Ricky, and what is your game of the week?
I say my game of the week is going to be the Buffalo Bills and New York Giants. Giants and Bills, kind of similar teams defensively, stout against the run, but if some question marks in terms of pass defense. But still, the Giants is kind of viewed as a team that's prone to the occasional mental lapses, little ineptitude. So I want to see Eli Manning come out. He hasn't thrown an interception yet this year, which is, it's easy to forget when you see all these mental flaws that they had over the first 2 weeks. But yeah, again, this is kind of similar to the situation with the Jets and Dolphins, two teams that just got to assert themselves. Victor Cruz could be back for the Giants, so that's another thing to keep an eye on in terms of just that Giants offense getting rolling with Eli Manning at the helm.
All right, thanks, Ricky. Let's check in with NESN.com's fantasy football expert, Nick Goss, to hear his DraftKings Dream Lineup.
I'm NESN.com fantasy football expert Nick Goss, here with your DraftKings Dream Lineup for Week 4. One value pick I have this week is Derek Carr, Oakland Raiders quarterback. He costs only $5,300. He has back-to-back 300-yard passing games with 5 touchdowns and 1 interception on the season. He's also playing a Bears defense in Week 4 that's given up 8 passing touchdowns, which are the second most in the NFL. Another player I would start in DraftKings this week is DONTE, wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. He costs $5,000 this week. He has a touchdown in all 3 games, leads the Colts in receptions, and plays an awful Jaguars defense that was just shredded by the New England Patriots. And then finally, Joseph Randle, running back for the Dallas Cowboys. He costs $5,500 in DraftKings this week. He's playing a New Orleans defense that ranks 26th against the run. He's also coming off an amazing week in which he had 87 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Atlanta Falcons. With DraftKings, you can play daily fantasy football games and set a new lineup every day. To play, go to DraftKings.com, keyword NESN.
So that's it for this week's NESN.com football update. Check in every week as we break down everything NFL, from predictions to analysis all the way to fantasy football advice. I'm Ashley Allen, and thanks for watching.